Mr. Roman. So do I pronounce this Mr. Roman Scott?
Yep, Roman Scott is correct.
Okay. So so I only have two questions for you, and one is how do advice for expats as well as UK residents coming to Singapore and advice for what kind of investments they should consider and how can they overcome challenges in the financial market for, in the year 2013 and also what is the definition of recession for Singapore? You know, and so is there really a recession? So that's about all.
Okay.
And so so what will happen is this: I will introduce you first. We just look at the camera just for a few seconds, and then after that, after I've done so, I'll turn to you and we'll begin our discussion.
Okay.
So it's that simple.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll try to keep it under 10 minutes.
Good.
No problem. So I'll just count to 3 and we'll begin. 1, 2, and 3. Hi, welcome to the National Grid's Choice Online News. I'm Robin Stienberg, and welcome to the Stienberg Review. Today we have Mr. Roman Scott, who is actually the British Chamber of Commerce economic spokesman with 15 years experience here in Asia that will give us some insights on what's happening ahead in 2013. Mr. Roman Scott, thank you for joining us here at the National Grid's Choice. Really, many of our viewers right now, especially from the UK, you know, and right across the expat community abroad, they want to settle down here in Singapore, and as you know, and they want to find out what can they do to study and research, and also what can they do to invest you know, between now and then, and what sort of insights have you got for us?
Okay. My understanding of the question is investment out of here, right, from Singapore, because.
Oh, sorry. Let me repeat that one more time. Sorry.
So is the question how to come here or how to invest here?
No, we have, so let me rephrase the question, we'll record again one more time. My question is that we have UK residents as well as expats coming to Singapore.
Right.
They want to set up a business and invest, and they would like to know what advice would you like to give to them on what sort of investments can they contribute here in Singapore and ASEAN, and also for Singaporean investors who wants to make an investment in the UK, what sort of prospect is there for them?
Okay. Okay.
Yes, so we'll just repeat it one more time. 1, 2, and 3. Hi, welcome to the National Grid's Choice Online News. I'm Robin Stienberg, and welcome to the Stienberg Review. Today we have Mr. Roman Scott, who is actually the British Chamber of Commerce economic spokesman with 15 years track record, who is going to give us some advice for expat community, including UK residents who are now settling down here in Asia. Mr. Roman Scott, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And right now, many of the residents, especially expats, coming from the UK as well as the Singaporean community, wanting to make investments vice versa. And there's some economic uncertainty coming ahead. What advice could you give to them on what can they do, and what sort of investment opportunities are there between Singapore and the UK?
Okay. Well, there's 3 sides to that. Right? One is looking at it from the point of view of investing in Singapore itself. So for those of you who are interested in that, as you saw in my presentation, I regard Singapore almost as a call option on the global economy. It is not the same as those exciting Asian consumption-driven emerging markets with lots of people like China, like India, like Indonesia, where it's all about direct investing in these growing economies who are growing off a low base. Very exciting growth. Singapore is already a highly developed, very wealthy country. It is an exceedingly open trade orientated economy. Its consumption base is very low. There's only effectively 3.5 million people consuming. So this is very much an economy that reflects what's going on in the bigger world picture, and particularly the sort of US, the EU, and big trade patterns with partners like China, than what's going on domestically. If you're coming to Singapore because you're plugged into that and it's to be a center for being part of that global trading economy, as many multinationals do, or investors who have businesses that serve a sort of broad remit, then Singapore is a good base. The domestic economy itself, I think, is not as exciting as other Asian economies around, and the best thing for Singapore is to use Singapore as a base. In terms of the neighbouring countries where Singapore makes a fantastic base to invest, by far the best opportunity, I believe, is Indonesia, which is its next door neighbour. Indonesia is the ASEAN growth story. As you heard, I'm a consumption economist. I'm a huge believer in rising Asian, urbanizing, growing middle class consumption. And as people get richer, and once they cross that $3,500, $4,000 per cap level, which is happening all over ASEAN, a lot of Singapore's neighbours, Thailand is well ahead of that, but the Cambodias, the Philippines, the Indonesias are all coming there. Then they start going out and spending real disposable income on all sorts of exciting stuff that we know about. They eat meat, and they go and eat burgers, and they start driving cars, and they graduate from motorcycles to cars, and they buy consumer electronics, and they consume brands, a lot of them Western brands. So there are huge opportunities to invest, and I think Indonesia is most probably one of the best stories, and it will continue to grow at about 6% a year, right? Significantly ahead of Singapore. The second market that used to be not as attractive from a macroeconomic management point of view, but now is becoming more attractive, is the Philippines. And again, that's got quite an exciting number of consumers. I think it's around sort of 50, 60 million. Thailand, which has a 60 to 70 million population, which is now the political turmoil has settled, is an exciting market to invest in. There's a lot of opportunities. And finally, Vietnam. And Vietnam has a very good domestic consumption base, 90 million people, growing very fast, and again, becoming interested in brands and consumption and being middle class and all that stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity being based out of Singapore rather than Singapore itself. The only thing I would caution on, that a lot of British and expats living in Britain will have seen and read in all the newspapers, is the excitement about Myanmar, Burma, formerly Burma. It's wonderful news that the political repression has finally ended, and Aung San Suu Kyi is out, and all the changes in Burma are to be applauded. Okay? But it's starting at a very low base, and its GDP per cap is still well below $1,000 a head, when you can go to countries like Indonesia and the Philippines and get, $3,000 per head, or Thailand where you can get, $4,000 or $5,000 per head, or even Malaysia where you're getting $10,000 per head. So I think it's too early for Burma. I would, if I was an expat or anyone investing in the Asian story, put all my bets on the big ASEAN countries.
Now, we also have rumors coming from abroad saying that Singapore is going to face a recession, especially coming from the UK. Is that true? And what is the definition of a recession here in Singapore?
Well, I couldn't speak for how the Singapore government define it. My assumption is they'll define it the way economists around the world, we have a standard definition for a recession. That is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Right? So if you have, a Q1 and a Q2, or a Q2 and a Q3 of negative growth, that's a recession. Even if you pop up at the other end. So you can go into recession in a year for 2 quarters, have a Q4 that's positive growth, and technically it looks like you've grown for the year, but you actually went into recession. I believe that is the case for Singapore this year. Certainly the Q3 number was negative. Okay, so Singapore, as I said, Singapore is a core option on the world economy. It reflects what's going on in the world. And we've seen what state we've been in this year with the EU crisis getting out of control. We had a terrible summer. We had appallingly low growth in EU, much slower recovery growth in the US than most economists thought. It hasn't been a good year, and the world growth will end up being 3% this year, not the 4% it should be, and a lot lower than anyone anticipated. 2% of world growth, remember, is recession. EU growth will be negative, right? They're in recession. British growth will be negative in recession. EU overall will come in at about -0.5% to -1%. The Americas will only just hit 2% if they're lucky. Most probably a little bit less, about 1.7, 1.8. Not a good year. Singapore just reflects. You have to think of Singapore as a mirror to the big systems in the world, and China's been slowing down. So a negative growth in the third quarter is not, a big surprise, because exports were slowing as exports around the world were slowing, and Q2 growth was only 0.2%, i.e. almost zero. So we've effectively in Singapore had a Q2 and a Q3 that is de facto as close to a recession as you can get, and the summer in Singapore hasn't felt very good, and you could see not as much of a buzz as normal. I think that Q4 will come in positive, so we'll end the year with a positive quarter, the last quarter. So you'll end up with an overall growth rate for the year for Singapore of around a couple of %, which by Singapore's standards is very low. It's not a good year. Okay, but in the middle, you'll have gone down, had a recession, and popped at the other end. The only thing to do is to look forward to next year. There's always next year. This is going to be a year to forget. Wipe off 2012, wasn't good. Next year we'll have some recovery, but Singapore, there will not be in recession. Growth will not be strong. It can't be strong until world growth is strong, and as world growth next year, because of all this austerity in Europe, will be weak. And we've got all sorts of uncertainties in the US, and elections, and Republicans being intransigent on spending money and fiscal expansion. You'll continue to have weak growth in the US, so Singapore will most probably do, say 3% next year, which by Singapore's standards is not great.
Well, by any chance, Mr. Roman Scott, thank you for sharing with us here at the National Critics' Choice, and we believe that next year the UK as well as the Singaporean community will continue to enjoy prosperity next year in 2013, and that's what I take it from you. And once again, thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice, the Steinberg Review. I'm Robin Steinberg. Thank you for joining me here at the National Critics' Choice. Have a good week ahead, and stay clear from negative reports. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Right.